In this video, we're going to discover how every time we're frustrated with someone else, it allows us to learn something about ourselves and accept something about ourselves, which leaves us more and more empowered and less like a victim. To do this, we're going to go into three things. The first one is what is being triggered and what is projecting. The second is how every time we're triggered, it is an unaccepted part of ourselves that we are putting onto somebody else. And the third one is how to free ourselves from these projections and triggers so that we can get empowered. And finally, I'll give you an experiment that you can go home with and test it out for yourself. For this purpose, I'm defining a trigger as a place where I get upset at somebody else. That's what I'm calling a trigger. So there's a trigger that is defined as I just have gotten upset and I'm not putting it on anybody. I'm not talking about that. That would be like, oh, I got triggered because I saw a car accident. I'm not speaking to that. I'm speaking about I got triggered because I saw a car accident and I hate that person for driving recklessly, right? That is what I'm talking about. Or that person just called me an asshole and I'm upset at them. That's what I'm talking about in a trigger. Projection means there's a part of myself that I can't accept and I am putting it on the other person. It might be true. Like I might think that person's an asshole and they are an asshole, or I might think that person is ignorant and they are ignorant. But the reason that I'm doing it is because I can't see it in myself. I won't allow myself to accept and love that part of myself, my own ignorance, or my own propensity to not listen to people, or my own propensity to be an asshole. And because I can't love that, I'm projecting it onto somebody else. And so the reason that this works, the reason that we go from trigger to a projection is because we are not really capable of loving in somebody else what we can't love in ourselves. So if we are frustrated at somebody, it means that we're not loving that aspect in them, and it means that then we're not loving that aspect in ourselves. And you don't have to take my word for this, just like check it out. Like write down all the times that you were triggered and notice in the way that you're triggered how that's also true for you. Notice how you're triggered because you were emotionally abandoned, and in that moment of emotional abandonment, you left. The problem that people get into when they can't see their triggers is that they just don't quite go deep enough. So for instance, you're triggered by somebody who has lied and you're like, well, I've been honest. I've actually not told a lie. And well, have you been transparent? Have you actually shared the important things, or have you not shared the important things? And how is that not a lie? So sometimes you just have to go down one level to see the part of yourself. Now, to be clear, they might have lied and it might not be okay. And I'm not saying that you should excuse it, but I'm talking about your internal trigger. I'm talking about the fact that you are controlled by their actions to the point of getting frustrated. I'm talking about the fact that you're no longer able to have an open heart with them. Even if you're drawing a boundary, even if you're saying no, even if you're expecting to leave, you have to shut yourself down and leave yourself because there's a part of yourself that you can't accept. So just because you're triggered doesn't mean that you're not going to take an action. It doesn't mean it's not true that they have done that thing, but we're talking about your freedom. And that's all that matters for this conversation is like, how do you create your own freedom in the moment? So that brings us to the third thing, which is how to free yourself of these projections so that you can feel deeply empowered. This is actually somehow the easiest part most of the time, which is as soon as you see the projection, there's almost immediate relief. As soon as you see that you're frustrated at somebody else because you're not accepting and loving a part of yourself, that frustration goes away. It just automatically happens most of the time. Then the question is, how do you learn to accept and love that aspect of yourself? Again, sometimes the awareness is just enough to do it and you don't have to do anything else. If that awareness doesn't immediately create acceptance in your system, then there's two more steps you can take. The first one is to learn to love that aspect of yourself, and the second is to forgive yourself. And here's a trick to learning how to love that aspect of yourself. You just think of somebody else who has that aspect that you love, and you go, oh wait, how can I love them and that aspect of them and not love myself, and actually give yourself that feeling of love back to yourself. Whatever it is that you're judging yourself for, say it's dishonesty. We've all been dishonest. Let's say that one of the things you judge yourself for is being a perfectionist. We all have some aspect that's a perfectionist in us. Let's say something that you're judging yourself for is being a know-it-all. There's some part of us that all thinks we know something that we don't know. That's just the reality of things. And so to be able to see it in others that you love and love yourself in that same way is a great little hack to learn how to love that in yourself. And then the last is just to forgive yourself. It's literally to give yourself forgiveness. And take a moment, close your eyes, feel that part of yourself and just say, oh, I forgive myself for needing to be perfect, or I forgive myself for being dishonest. And those two things can really lessen your own projection and your own trigger of yourself. So here's an experiment you can do that will totally change the way you project and get triggered. And it's a little bit scary, but that's what makes it work so well. So the first thing that you have to do is learn how to do an upright apology. An upright apology, we have a podcast on it, and you can find out how to do it at view.life/experiments. So the first thing that you're going to do is write down 5 ways that you got triggered by somebody. And then the next thing you're going to do is see how the projection worked in each of them. What is it that you got triggered by that you also have and that you can't fully accept and love in yourself? And then the third thing you're going to do is apologize to the person who you're triggered by. And you're going to do it in an upright way, which means you're not going to do it with shame. If you do it with shame, it'll just make it worse. And you're just going to apologize to those people. And then all of a sudden you'll see all of those times you're triggered, it's just going to become less and less and less. And you'll be more and more at peace and loving and accepting of yourself and others. If you want more content like this, like and subscribe. And if you want us to create anything in particular, then just give us a comment below and we'll see what we can do.